Hi, all, and welcome to the Found Artist Files, the podcast that delves into real stories that inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter who you are, your story matters. Every journey, no matter how big or how small, is worth celebrating. Here, we'll explore the powerful narratives of everyday people, artists, creators, and dreamers just like you, sharing the struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way. So keep going, keep creating, and remember, you're crafting your own unique path, one story at a time. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. Today with us, we have Laquan Lewis. Hi, Laquan.
Hi, hello.
Thank you so much for being here. I would love to start off by hearing a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do in the industry.
I am a independent filmmaker born and raised in Los Angeles. I've been making films for 5 years, but I've been trying to actively do it for maybe like 7, 8 years. And I'm transitioning from the short film world to the feature film realm.
So knowing that you did, start this journey right after you had kind of gone through high school. So how did you go from feeling unsure about high school to realizing that art was actually something that you wanted to pursue and that was a calling to you?
Filmmaking wasn't something that I was interested in until like a few years after high school. Like if you were to ask me this when I was 18, even 19, and anything before, this would not have been an option for me. I've always been a creative person in the sense of like I grew up drawing, I grew up as a dancer, so I knew that creativity was something that I just had since I could remember. And so after I graduated high school, I set out to do psychology and I started going to school for psychology, like in community college. But I knew in the back of my head that like I needed to do something creative. And so I was just weighing my options from music to dance, doing dance professional or all the realms. And I think acting kind of like came to my mind because it was something that I've never done before and it felt like something that was emotional. And that's when I realized that this is something that was challenging but creative and it fulfilled me in a way that doing anything in psychology wouldn't have done.
But it seems like you were, feeling sort of this pull and this shift, and like how for you was it that like filmmaking, but also storytelling specifically was something that you wanted to lean more towards once you got more into the creative space?
So the making film specifically didn't come in until I started doing the acting because as an actor, I was thinking ahead and thinking, okay, I want to play these roles, I want to do this, I want to do that. But then I realized that the spaces that or the characters that I wanted to play didn't exist for young Black men at that time, which was what 2013 or so. And then I saw Fruitvale Station, and I thought that, oh wow, like, and I think that might have been Michael B. Jordan's first role. I might be wrong, but it was the first role that I saw him in, and I thought that, oh, that's the type of Black character that I would like to play, someone that was human more than a stereotype. And so that's when I made the transition when I decided to get into writing and learning how to write. But then writing, I realized that people weren't going to make the things I wanted to write. So then I got into directing, and then filmmaking just hit me, and I realized, oh, acting isn't actually what I wanted to do. It's filmmaking. I want to make the stories rather than be the vessel inside of them.
Interesting. So from a storytelling perspective, which is really sort of something that you wanted to lean more towards because you wanted to ultimately play these types of roles, but was there also a need for you to be like, these are also the films that I may have been seeking that I want to be able to tell and I want to be able to showcase for others? Or was it just more of like from an acting standpoint that these are the roles that I wanted to be able to play or be able to portray?
It was both. It started off as these are the roles I want to play, but then after like digging deeper into it, I realized like, well, why do I want to play these roles so bad? And it's because I didn't see myself on screen, and it and then I made the decision to give myself the opportunities I needed to create these stories because as a Black person, I didn't see myself. As a queer person, I didn't see myself. And it was something that I thought was needed. And I became honestly obsessed with this idea of like giving representation to people who don't feel seen. And I didn't feel seen. And that was one of the biggest challenges for me early on was I had no references. Like I couldn't say I wanted to make this type of movie. I wanted to make, or I want to be this type of actor. I felt like the version of me that existed wasn't represented. And I wanted to create those stories.
And one of the things that you're doing with your screenwriting is that you really are creating a space that allows people to feel seen, but you're also approaching, representing marginalized situations and experiences in a very authentic way. So how do you, when you're shooting or when you're writing, like how do you be able to capture all of that and have it feel very honest and raw?
I think for me, authenticity is the most important thing. I don't want to assume anything. And I think that the best way to get authentic stories and behaviors and like details about a character or an experience is to speak from that community. I have a friend named Sam who's trans, and I was talking to him at the time about like what I was doing, and he showed interest in acting, and we were just casually talking about it. So I thought, "Do you want to be in my film?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so I made the main character trans, and this because I was coming at a realm or speaking for a demographic that I wasn't a part of, I made sure to check in with Sam about what's going on, what's his experience with loneliness, what does it look like for him when it comes to sleeping around or looking for connection. And then I thought, well, why not get multiple stories from different people to shape the story? So that's when I decided to just seek out as many trans masculine and trans men who are willing to share their experiences with me. And through that, I wrote my first short film. And I checked in with them each time that I would write something new. I made sure that the authenticity of their experiences were there. And there's a lot of nuances to my first short film that a lot of trans men can see and feel, a connection to. And once I realized that this is is doing them justice, two is making my story feel real and authentic. And that was when I decided that I'm going to stick to this formula of checking in with a community that I'm writing about and get their personal experience more than just a few. But I had to get a variety and just kind of put it all together, keep them updated because for me, it's more important to speak to them and speak to that community than to speak to the masses. Because, like we were talking about earlier, it's important to feel seen, and it's important. I feel like that speaks volumes compared to generalized storytelling. Why am I going to make a film or tell a story about someone and then not check my sources? It doesn't make sense to me, and the fact that people are still doing this blows my mind. But that's my method, and that's what I think is important. And I would rather do this any day than to just assume someone's experience and then write what I think I've seen. So
To be able to go out to the source is going to be the best way to make sure that they do feel that connection and feel seen and authentic. So I love that you have made sure that that is also part of your creative style. And on the topic of your first film is like you started off by one going from acting and then going into storytelling and going into screenwriting, but there was something clearly about this first film that you were like, not only do I want to write it, I also want to direct it. So like what was that kind of shift and that feeling for you to be like, I don't want to actually hand this off to someone else to be able to create this vision. I want to be able to be the one to make sure that it is doing justice to my vision, to the script, and to the community simultaneously.
realistically, I just didn't know who would want to do this because since I didn't see it out there, I didn't think anyone would want to make these stories and I wanted them to be made. So I was like, I'm going to do it. Like, I have no choice but to make it myself. I had a very specific vision for what authenticity looked like. I feel like maybe I was the best person to make it because I wanted it to be done right. I didn't know if they were going to, check in with the community as they directed it or if they were going to cast a person like something that to go back to the trans thing, something else that was very important to me was to have a trans actor play a trans character. And I don't know if directors are thinking in that way. It was too precious of a story for me to just hand off to someone else. And I think that, like I said, no one else can do this but me because in my head, there's a right way of representing someone, there's a wrong way, there's a right emotion to have when you're trying to come up with visuals and the intimacy that's being shown on camera. And there's the way that someone who can put themselves in that shoes would do.
You touched on authentic casting, which is,
Yeah,
the most
extremely
important.
important. Oh my
So,
God.
yes. Yeah. I mean, how do you have someone feel a scene or feel a scenario if they have no idea what that scenario is like.
Yes, yeah.
And for those who don't know, right, like you're completely self-taught for a filmmaker, which
But
is
yeah.
amazing in your and how you actually get it. So for that, I mean, you also being like, I need to be able to make sure that this is done properly, or that this is done the way that I want it to be accomplished. So how was it when you were first stepping on your set with no formal training and you just coming on with like a really strong vision? Like, what was that experience like for you to be like, all right, this is here, we're going to do this. This is the first time. A director, don't worry, we got this.
Yeah, it was scary. I was very nervous because yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew what was expected of me, but I've never done it. And because I didn't go to school and because I taught myself through literally the internet and through books, I like I had I think it was very courageous of me to do that, but it was just scary. I came onto the set, and realistically, I had to be transparent with everyone. I made sure that I let everyone know, like, hey, I remember on the first day of shooting on my first short film, I would talk whoever like I would come in contact with or like had to talk to. I would just like preface by saying like, oh, by the way, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm learning as I go, just like be patient with me. And I was just very transparent. I let everyone know, like, hey, we're in this together. I'm relying on you guys to help me do this because this is something that I want to do. When people did come to me with questions about things, I had to, yeah, I had to just figure it out. And I think that's kind of the job of a director, regardless of if you've done it 20 years or if you've done it one day, is you're going to encounter things I've never encountered. You're going to do it. You have to figure it out on the spot. So it was a lot of that, a lot of like, oh, we don't have time for this. What scenes are we going to cut, or how are we going to shoot this without so much coverage? And it was a lot of decision making in that way that I feel like I got better at as I went. But the first day, I just was like, I have a very clear vision of how I want things to be. And I think that was part of the prep that I had to do as a director, was make sure that going in, especially that first day ever, was what is the vision? How do I want this to look? And stepping there, if I found myself not knowing what to do or what I'm doing, just remember, okay, this is how this is supposed to look in your head. What do you have to do to get that done? And luckily, I had my cinematographer, who's like one of my best friends, who walked me through everything. He helped. He helped me through it, and because of that first short film, I felt like each film I got more and more confidence with.
That creative muscle that was always there that you just may not have been able to utilize in that way before, and just being able to use it over and over again, it just really strengthens it. It gives you the opportunity to be like, the first one was just like, we were testing it out, we were trying it, but it obviously gets better as you keep going. So it's just like, keep going, keep making, and keep trying. There's always going to be hiccups. There's always going to be things that come up along the way. Those roadblocks are just, they're not meant to stop you. They're actually meant to like redirect you into the things that are meant to actually happen. So it is like trusting the process and trusting the flow. But for you, I mean, can you just talk a little bit more about some of the key things that you truly learned about from, leadership and collaboration during that first shoot?
Confidence is key. Just being confident in yourself and knowing that you're where you're supposed to be. You're doing this for a reason. So I think that I learned that even though I don't feel confident because I've never done it, I need to be confident and trust in myself, and that helped me a lot through the 3 days, and then the next 2 days for the second film and the 4 days for the next. But also something that I learned from the first film was, because I'm in charge and I'm the leader, I have to set the tone. We're all looking to you. So like when you come in, just set the tone, like be nice, be confident, like make people feel special, like, like you're conducting this, like the way that this set is ran is based off of your energy. And that really stuck with me. And so I made sure, like, every time I came on set, to say hi to everybody, to learn people's names, to, to not get upset or angry if something goes wrong or if something isn't meeting my expectations. Because if everyone's comfortable, then things will go, at least within my control, can go smoothly. So that was a big takeaway. Also, just be malleable, which is something that I had to realize after every film starts going to have unexpected issues. So just mold to it, work with it, go with the flow. Like I can't linger on things that I can't control.
how to be a human being on set. And I think it's so and so important to be able to bring, like you said, that energy and that vibe.
Hmm.
Because it really does make or break us head, right? Like we are all here to be able to create something that it is that we want to be able to create. But you also knew that you had this passion to be able to tell the story that you wanted to, which also goes back to you as a filmmaker. Some of the struggles from a filmmaker is actually getting funding for some of the projects and the stories that we want to be able to create. So for you, you were like, I have a need to tell the story. I want to tell it as authentically, but like as passionate as I can. And so for you, which I love, is you were like, I can't wait on someone else to help my dreams come true. I'm going to create them myself. And so you actually self funded
Hmm.
your projects.
Yeah.
And for you, what was that experience like for you to be able to craft the stories or be able to actually tell the stories that you wanted to be able to tell?
You write what you know. So I wrote realistically. I didn't write car chases or anything or big deaths or anything. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a very small budget. When I first met my cinematographer, I presented him the script and I was like, okay, don't think about me, don't think about anything except the film. Realistically, how much do you think this will cost? And he said 10 to 15,000. And I was like, okay, well then I'm going to need that amount of money. And I went for 15,000 because I was the higher one. And since I was a server at a restaurant, I was saving my tips, and I got the money I need. I think I got 10,000 for the production and another five for post. But I was willing to do it because, like you said, like I realized like I can't wait on other people. Like, and if I want something to happen, I have to be in charge of that. And I honestly didn't feel, still don't feel bad about spending that amount of money. I didn't feel hurt by it. I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, should I do this? Like, oh, that's a lot of money. But, I wanted it to be done. At the time, I wasn't doing grants or anything. That wasn't realistic to me, but something needed to be done. And if I had to pay it myself, I was going to do it, which is what I did. I paid out of pocket for the first two and then half of the third. And that was just my mindset, and it's still my mindset now with my future. I'm going to pay for some of that, because I want to, and I have a pride in that now because now I can look at it and say that was because of me. This happened because of me, and I'm proud of it, and I'm the reason why this exists.
What are some of your like external influences or any inspirations that really helped you like define your vision?
For me, I got a lot of inspiration from music. I got a lot of inspiration from like photography and like images that I would see on like Tumblr. I don't know. That's just what I was looking at. I don't look to other directors or other movies for inspiration. Also, I think it helps because I'm not referencing anything. I'm not copying someone. So like, one of my favorite examples is that there's this photo on Tumblr that I saw of two people, I think, embracing or something in a mirror, and I looked at that. I don't know who these people are. I don't know why they're embracing. I don't know anything, but that image of two people embracing and a reflection really spoke to me. And I recreated that and added context to it, which is kind of what I do a lot with my films is I go off of emotions. I go off of, just things that I feel I can work with. So it's very unconventional, I feel like, but I rarely reference movies. I usually go off of emotions and feels from music, and if I see a striking image online, I'll attach my own context to that and see how that works within the greater story.
But from you, it's like you're feeling something, you're feeling the energy from something, and it doesn't matter where the inspiration comes from. It's literally inspiration strikes at like the most random times, but that's why it's inspiration. Yeah, but how are you actually transitioning into actually designing a scene? Do you first write the script and you're like, let me first focus on the story, and then you're like, how does this visually work? Or are you visualizing it first and then writing it down?
I'm writing the story first. There are some moments in the script that are referencing something, like the mirror scene, and Come As You Are. I already started writing the story, and then I wanted to incorporate that, and because of assigning context to it, I thought, how can I make this make sense? I think most of the time I'm writing it first and then coming up with the visuals later, depending, because unless I have a pre already idea, then I'll add that. But most of it is script writing because that's the most difficult part for me. I hate writing; it's so difficult. So I need to get that out the way, and then based off of what I've written, then I'll attack it with the things that I've learned over the years. Of okay, what angles and lighting and position or camera positions can best convey what's going on in this scene or in this shot. And I think that that is when, the education I've given myself comes into play. So it's like, okay, I know that these shots can evoke these emotions, this lighting can do this, or camera movement can say one thing, or no camera movement can say something different. So I just utilize what I've learned in the moment post writing, but sometimes I have like a very loose idea based off of certain references that will guide the visuals. But it's just a lot of it's just what makes sense to me with what's happening in this moment and using the education I have to back that up or to reinforce it.
So then when you have, say, like now you funded it, you wrote it, you have actually created it, what for you is like, oh wow, like, this is amazing, like I feel successful. I feel like I have successfully created something. Is that at the funding part? Is that at the screenwriting? What is success for you, and like what does that actually mean for you?
I think that being a successful filmmaker to me is just making a movie, regardless of if I make money from it, regardless of if it gets awards or gets into film festivals. I think that just getting the job done and successfully accomplishing what I set out to do, that is the highest level of success. So every time I finish a project, I feel successful and even more successful than I did before because now I have two, now I have three, now I have a feature. I think that for me, success is literally just accomplishing. And it reminds me of something funny. I had a lot of trouble calling myself a filmmaker for the first few years because I felt like, oh, I have to have something to be a filmmaker. And then I finished Only for the Night and then started writing my next one and looked back and thought, oh, I already made a film. So I guess I am a filmmaker. And so I had a hard time accepting that title. But it all lines up with the idea of accomplishing the goal is success. It's a
Once a
success.
filmmaker, always a filmmaker.
Yes.
And going back to it, because it's like it was something that was always in you. You just need to use that muscle that you haven't used before, that you forgot how to use. So it was always in you.
I feel like I'm lucky enough to have found the thing that I'm pretty sure I was meant to do. And I feel like not a lot of people feel that way, or people are fortunate enough to experience that because I know a lot of young people are trying things out and experimenting and doing all these things. And for me, it just makes so much sense. And the more I think about it, which I think about this all the time, but the more I think about it, the more I realize, oh, I think this is it. I think this is the thing I'm supposed to do, which is wild because so many people chase that. And I feel very lucky that I found something that just in my genes, like as Laquan, like it makes sense to do this. I love telling stories. I love creativity. I love helping people. And by putting these stories out there, it helps people.
Art is mirroring people's experiences, and it really does heal because it brings people together by providing those authentic stories that people can now feel seen. And
Yeah.
that's the power of art. And so, some of your stories and the most recent one, Come As You Are, it talks about an experience of someone being diagnosed with HIV, which, but it's not the stories that we hear or that were told in the 60s or the 70s. Like it's a real time, more realistic situation. So, talking about that experience and writing about that experience, how do you think, or what do you hope for in the future that art can really do to be able to change sort of the stigmas around topics or scenarios or situations that people might not be so educated on? What are you kind of hoping for, or just even the power that art kind of has around those situations?
I think exactly what you're saying is true. And I think that that's literally like what's very important to me in terms of all of this, like representation and just all of it is showing someone who may not know. I'm not even talking about someone of the community, showing someone out of the community the experience of someone else. I think that's so important and so powerful because it can give them perspective that they might not have otherwise. And so, with Come As You Are being about HIV, when I began writing the script, I was trying to look for other movies and see how they did it. And nothing in these movies looked like what it is like to have HIV now. And that was when I realized that this story needs to be told from this perspective of being in the 2020s, with medication being the way it is, being undetectable, undetectable being untransmittable, and like how there is no harm if you're taking the treatment and holding this disease. And so for me, I was very disappointed when I saw that all these movies were period pieces and they end up in death, or there's a lot of shame around it. And there's a lot of like all these things that kind of show the negative side of it, which my film doesn't do any better at showing a non-negative side of it. But what I'm getting at is I don't want someone who has HIV in like another state and like, I don't know, Wyoming to look at this and think like, oh, I have HIV and I'm going to die. So that was a very important angle for this movie was, showing people like there's just other versions of having this that don't end in death, that don't end in being sick, that aren't about being rejected, and Come As You Are kind of follows that, where it's just HIV now looks very different than it did back then. And if that's not what's in the media right now, then we need more of that in the media. We need more movies and TV shows that show it so that people who aren't normally exposed to this can get a better viewpoint. Same thing with, the trans experience, the same thing with being queer in general. If we're only getting stereotypes, people who aren't surrounded by people of the community, they're going to go off of that and take that. And I don't want that.
One of the things that you touched on, which I think is so important to also bring back, is that art is not just a form of entertainment. It's also one of the biggest forms of education.
Yeah.
So
and
to
influence.
be able to provide, yeah, exactly. And to be able to provide real world situations and scenarios and up-to-date situations that people can, like you said, learn, right? Like those movies all do a great job at like what that time period was like, but that's not now. And for all communities to be able to create the stories that are of today that people are really seeing, it also gives us, who's not part of that community, the opportunity to learn and be more open and be more accepting. And that's ultimately the society that I think most people want to live in, right? Underneath all of these labels or all under these communities, at our core, we are all the exact same. We are all human beings and we all deserve to belong and we all want to belong. And so for your films and just like your creative future and your path in general, what kind of impact are you hoping that some of your stories really do provide for either this generation or for generations to come as well?
I hope that it just one most was very important to me is showing people that they're not alone, showing them that their stories matter, that they're understood. Another is, like we said, to educate people and to show people that like we are humans too. We experience loneliness the same way. We experience heartbreak, loss, shame, guilt. I think that there's this separation that makes people assume things, and like that's where like stereotypes were formed. And so I want my work to bridge those gaps and even like to have people who aren't of the community feel like they can relate, and that's going to create compassion. So if I have a cis hetero person watch my first short film Only for the Night and see like, oh, I see myself in Sam, I see myself in the protagonist, and I may not identify with what their gender identity is or their sexuality, but I know what it feels like to be lonely. And I think that by having someone identify with someone who's not of the community can help them understand or embrace that person, individual, community, whatever, more. Because you realize that these are all human things. It's not like queer people or black people or whoever are experiencing things in a different way. And I think that that's my main goal, and that's what I want my work to do, is to bridge these gaps, show people that we're all the same, give perspective, and speak to people who feel forgotten. The whole reason why I'm doing it, because I was that person. I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel represented, and I feel like with that it will create a better environment for some demographics and some communities.
So powerful. And I mean, I love that. And I think like that is the true reason for why people get into filmmaking and get into the creative space, is because they're hoping to shed light on the people who don't feel like their voices are heard or they don't feel seen. I love what you said about bridging that gap. There's so many things by society that puts divisions between us, but at the end of the day, loneliness is something that everybody can feel, everybody can understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to have multiple communities be able to be like, I understand that, I resonate with that, I feel seen by that, I think that's so powerful to be able to create. And going back to, I know that when you were a child you danced, you acted, but can you just remember or share some of a pivotal moment from your childhood that really kind of influenced your path?
I think something that did help influence the way I become and the person I am creatively is um support from my mom. My mom was super supportive of anything I wanted to do creatively. She was so proud of my drawings. She would show people my drawings. She, encouraged it. And I think that was something that was very vital to me because, regardless of if she did it as an adult or not, she did it when it mattered and when it counted, which is as a child and even a teenager. She supported my dancing as a teenager. She always showed that she was proud of the creativity that I held and encouraged it. And I think that I took that and ran with it. And now I'm sitting here just doing anything I want creatively and pushing myself as far as I can. I'm encouraging everyone to do the same. And I think that if my mom wasn't so loving in that way, I probably would have grown up thinking, oh, that's not an option. And so I learned, or I was shown at an early age, do what you want as long as you're happy, and that really stuck with me. And eventually I translated that into film. But before film, it existed in just like a spiritual level of, oh, I'm having fun, so let me keep doing it. Oh, I'm getting, people are saying I can do it, so I am doing it. Like it just felt like I just felt very supported in creativity as a child.
And you're sharing your light with everybody, and I love that. So I want to just say that we support you and we are so excited for all that you are going to accomplish and that we get to see all of your work. And thank you so much for being here, thank you so much for being you, and to everyone at home, always be you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Did you enjoy this week's journey? So do we. So head on over to our YouTube channel where you'll find an extended version of this week's episode. And don't forget to give us a follow on all of our other socials at NextFoundArtist. Also, head on over to our website, nextfoundartist.com, to find and watch independent films from your next favorite artist.